What's the deal? This is your host, Brian.
Hater.
And this is JegnaTalk for you by you.
#1 teen show in the Midwest, broadcasted on 152 radio stations.
And today we're here interviewing
Andrew Kump.
And before we get started, could you tell all us your socials?
Yeah, my Facebook is Andrew Kump for District 2 at large. My Instagram is Kump4Wyco. That's Kump, the number 4, Wyco. And my website is kumpforwyco.com. That's KUMP, the number 4, Wyco.com.
And to start off with, the first question I have for you is, if your dogs could talk, what would they say about you?
If my dogs could talk, they would tell me to open the door when I go to bed so they could sleep in the bed with me. Because they're the most needy, like, cuddly dogs. They're a couple puppies, and they got to be on top of us at all times, man. They can't leave me alone.
Yeah.
What kind of dogs are they?
It's a couple. They're Blue Heeler mixes. It's half Blue Heeler, half Australian Shepherd.
Oh.
And they're 2 siblings. They're about a year and a half old.
A year and a half? Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're not vicious. They're vicious cuddlers, man.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure snack or show?
Guilty pleasure snack. I love just anything with chocolate on it. I'm not gonna lie. After I graduated college, I stopped playing football. Got a little heavy on the sweets. Guilty pleasure show. Man, I don't want to say something basic, but I do like The Office. Michael Scott, Steve Carell, all that.
So if you had a superpower for one day, what would you do with it in Wyandotte County?
If I had a superpower for one day, what would I do with it in Wyandotte County? I think, man, if I had the power to let's say super strength, right? Like the Superman strength. I'd like to clean up some of the trash along K32 in the roads. I was driving the other day. I saw a boat. Someone dropped a boat off. Yeah, so I can't pick it up myself, but with that Superman power, I could.
How you drop a boat off?
I think they just kicked off the trailer.
Like, who just drops a boat off?
I know, man.
It's really Wyandotte.
It's really Wyandotte.
We're finna get your little life, your little category in life. Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Wyandotte County. I was born at St. Luke's, which is on the Missouri side, but my parents and we lived off of Cernich, and I lived there for a while, lived out in Piper for a while, and then lived in Strawberry Hill for the last 5 or so years. My wife and I, we bought our home here in off of between Turner and Argentine, where that area meets. So I've lived all over Wyandotte County, but I've always lived here, except for when I was in school. I lived away for a couple of years.
So what was it like growing up in Wyandotte County?
Man, Wyandotte County is so cool. It's just the most unique place. We're what they call, this isn't my phrase, but a quote-unquote minority-majority county, which means that we have just as many minority groups percentage-wise as we do white population. And I think what you get when you have that kind of community is just exposure to so many cool cultures. Like, you meet so many people from different backgrounds. It's unbelievable. It's something you don't really find anywhere else, and I'm so grateful for it. And I think it's really helped just shape my life outlook. I love trying new things, meeting new people. So I really credit Wyandotte County for that.
Can you tell us about your parents and siblings, and what they make you grow, and how did they make you grow?
Sure. My dad was a KCK police officer for 27 years. He retired. Oh, gosh, it's been about 8 years now. And my mom was a nurse. She used to work at the old Bethany Hospital, which is not open anymore. She was a nurse there, and now she teaches. So she teaches nursing school, and she helps nursing schools get accredited. When you have a particular type of school, you have to follow these rules, and she makes sure that the schools are following the rules that they're supposed to. I'm the second of 5 kids. I have 3 siblings and 1 sister. My 2 younger brothers are twin brothers, are the youngest. My sister's younger than me, and then I have an older brother as well. So I grew up in a rowdy household. We all were big. We all loved wrestling and playing sports, so we always were kind of on top of each other. So the rule in my house was if you want to eat dinner, you better be at the table when dinner's ready, or you might not get any. Yeah. But really, my parents were hard workers. My dad worked nights for most of his career, so I was used to him, getting home from work at 7 a.m. and leaving at 10 p.m. to go in. And my mom, depending on what rotation she was on, she also worked nights often. So I grew up in a family of hard workers, and I think that really has I try to take that with me in what I do in my life because it's just so inspiring, and I've seen how much they've done for us and the sacrifices they've made, and I just want to take that work ethic into my life and what I do.
So what values did your family instill in you that still guide your life today?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, like we just talked about, hard work. If you want to do something, do it right. If you're going to do it right the first time, and make sure it's if there's no job that's worth doing if you're not going to do it correctly. So really just throwing yourself into your tasks, dedication to what you're doing, but also a sense of community. With my dad being a police officer, he was out in the community. His first beat was here on Quindaro. And so he was out in the community, and he really instilled in me at a young age the importance of knowing your neighbor and knowing the place that you live. If you're going to live in a place and you want to raise a family in a place, you should take the extra steps to get to know the people who live there and build a positive relationship with your community. So those are the values that he really instilled in me that I take with me, and I think they've gotten me through a lot of difficult times in my life as well.
You better play with all your neighbors, huh?
Oh yeah, man. We play with all of our neighbors, all the cousins, play cousins, all of it. We played with every. Yeah, it was when I grew up, it was I'll see you out. You go outside and play after school, and I'll see you when the street lights come on. So go find something to do with the neighbors.
What's a childhood memory that shaped your perspective?
I remember childhood memory that shaped my perspective. I remember during the housing crisis in 2008. You guys might be a little young for that, but 2008, 2007.
That's my birth.
Yeah, the economy wasn't great in the United States for a lot of people, and I remember my parents working 2 and 3 jobs to make sure we had a roof over our head and had food on the table. So I remember that, and looking back on it, when you're a kid, you don't realize what's happening. You don't have that context. But now that I'm an adult, just the dedication to their family and to making sure that we had the best and trying to keep us from that reality. It was tough for a while, but I remember them working. I remember my dad particularly working 15, 16-hour days. He'd do his police shift, get off, and go work security somewhere. He'd work security at NASCAR when that would come around, stuff like that. So I just remember that hard work, and that's really underscored for me, at a young age, how important it is to work hard, to be able to provide for your family and the people who rely on you.
NASCAR. He's a bodyguard for a NASCAR, or just
he had been. They put him all over the place. He did some of his work. I think they have a safe there, so he'd sit in front of the safe. Armed security. But there were times when he would be bodyguards for some of the drivers. He'd come home and some of the they'd give him here's a signed mini race car. You give it to your kids. I'm not a NASCAR guy. I don't follow it, but it was cool for me as a kid knowing that my dad was protecting famous people. So I do remember that. Yeah.
Wow. How did your upbringing influence your sense of your community?
So we've already touched on it a little bit, but just realizing at an early age that community is everything in a real sense. We aren't who we are without the environment around us, and understanding and investing in that community, and understanding that, most of the people I grew up with, just being from Wyandotte County, they're in my life today in a very real way. A lot of my friends that I met as a kid were in my wedding, for example. So building that community and building those relationships that are lasting, that has such a profound impact on kind of the trajectory of your life. Yeah, I think I've kind of touched on it. Just coming to mind, at least 2 of my friends, besides my brothers, obviously, at least 2 of my friends who I went to grade school with were best men in my wedding, or groomsmen in my wedding, rather. So community is important because those are the connections you're making through your entire life, and you want to see your community do as well as you do. John F. Kennedy said, "A rising tide raises all boats." This idea that when my friends are doing well, I'm also doing well because I want to see my friends succeed. That's kind of the approach I take to community.
What was your experience like at Christ the King Grade School?
So Christ the King Cobras, I don't think it's open anymore, but that's where I that's a Catholic school. I went to Catholic school in grade school and high school, and then in college. But college was because I played football, and they offered me a scholarship. So it does what it does. But that really you get your first taste of like hard work when you're in school, and it's not hard work like as an adult, but when you're a kid, showing up, making the grades, learning who you are as a person. That really starts in grade school. One of my good friends who I just talked about, I met him at Christ the King. He was a groomsman in my wedding. So it really it's that early, you plant the seeds, you lay the foundation of what your life's going to look like. At least I did in that moment in grade school. So I'd say it was a good experience for the most part. Very typical Catholic grade school experience. I served at Mass. We did the ice cream socials. Involved, being out and involved in the community. But I had a good experience in grade school. Obviously, with my dad being a cop, I tried to stay out of trouble because I was scared of him. He used to tell me, if you get in trouble, I'll know before you do. So going to a private school where they really instill in you a sense of like, worldly, how you should act worldly, but also how you want to act spiritually. I think that helped me quite a bit. I had a good experience.
What were your favorite subjects or teachers at Bishop Ward High School?
Oh, that's a great question, and a lot of my teachers are probably going to see this, so I don't want to name any favorites, but I'll tell you my favorite subjects.
Oh wow.
I've always been a history guy. I love history. I think we can learn a lot by looking at the past. So history was always my favorite subject. Not my favorite, but one that I use a lot in my life today, and I understand the value of it. I kind of even recognized when I was in high school is English. I like to read, so some of the books I really enjoyed, some of them I didn't. But English is one of those that even in high school you kind of understand this is going to be important for life. I knew I wanted to do some kind of field that required a lot of writing. I knew I wasn't going to do math because I didn't like math. So I knew I was going to work in a field that required writing. So English, history, and then we had a political, not quite political science, but like a political theory class in high school that kind of goes over just the civics, the functions of the government, how a law becomes a law, how it starts and gets to that point where it's voted on. The Constitution, Bill of Rights, going over those kind of foundational documents. I really enjoyed that. I think that had a big impact on me and why I decided to go to law school was those classes early on. But when you have a good teacher, any class, they could make any class interesting. So I was blessed to have a lot of very good teachers in high school. So there wasn't really a class I didn't like. There were some that I was better at than others. But I enjoyed most of my classes. I'm not afraid to say, though, that math was not my favorite.
Yeah, math is
something. I hate math.
Middle school math was fun, but it's like once high school started, it was like, wow.
Once they started adding letters and all that, I'm like, I'm in over my head here.
Geometry, algebra.
Yeah, we did trigonometry and calculus. I remember those two, and I remember not liking either of them.
Calculus is something I'm not ready for.
I'm sorry, Mr. Shaver, if you're watching. You did a great job. It just wasn't for me.
How did sports or any extracurricular activities help shape you? Or what you experienced during high school?
Yeah, I played sports. I played football. I played basketball, and then I did track and field. And I ran a little bit in track, but really my thing was I threw shot put, discus. Those go a long way in developing your character because you don't have to be out there doing those, playing sports. You're part of a team because you want to be. And it's long hours, early practices in the morning, especially basketball. When you're a freshman, you don't get the good hours. We had 5 a.m. practices before school. And there's times where you're like, do I want to do this? But, when you commit to doing something and you want to do it right and you want to stick to it, really developing that mindset early. For football specifically, football helped me get into college and paid for college, so that had a larger impact, I'd say, than the other sports. But all of the sports teach you that you're not, it teaches you how to be part of a team, to see the bigger picture, to work not because you want to do it or because you have to do it, but because there's people relying on you and they're expecting a lot out of you. So that's what sports gave me.
Yeah. How many you get any D1 offers?
I didn't. I had a walk-on offer in D1, but it was far away from home, and I decided against it. It was football. It was not basketball. I just wanted to be. I was very okay at basketball. I was good at rebounding. I was not going to college for basketball, and I knew that.
What was your position?
Center, and I was tall for Bishop Ward, but I wasn't tall for a college center.
What lessons did you learn from being a student athlete?
You really learn how to work hard, and that mentality of, get the job done, do it right. Because when you're a student athlete, if you do it wrong, do it again, right? Get on the line and run. So might as well do it right the first time, save us all some trouble. And you learn, like I said, you learn to work hard, not just for you, but for your teammates, for your coaches, and for your school. It was a lot of, our school was when I went to Ward, we were a very good baseball school. I didn't play baseball, but I saw, you feel that pride when you're a baseball team. I think we won at one point 7 state championships in a row. So the whole school feels that pride. So you're working hard to give those students that pride as well. Now, I never won a state championship, but it's all about, working for something that's bigger than yourself.
What led you to choose the University of St. Marion for college?
So I didn't start at St. Mary. I started at a D2 school in Missouri, and I left because it was a little expensive, and I didn't love living away from home as much as I thought I would. I thought I was gonna just love it, get away, live in a dorm, but it's hard, when you're 18 and you have to live on your own for the first time. So I came home at St. Mary. I was able to, my parents and my family still lived in Piper, which is about 30 minutes from St. Mary. So I was able to drive to school and drive home every day. I think that was very good for me because I don't know if I was mature enough at that point yet to be on my own and do school and do football. So having that structure helped me a lot. But at the end of the day, I think why I chose it was they had a professor who ended up being my advisor, Dr. Zacharias. She was a very caring and kind woman, very intelligent, and I had a chance to meet her, and I realized that she really, really cared about her students. And also my brother, Jeffrey, he played football at St. Mary as well, and if I transferred to St. Mary, I'd have 1 year to play with him. So I was able to play a season with Jeff, and I really enjoyed that. So those were like the 2 reasons. I got there. I did really well academically, and also I did pretty good in football. I think I hold the record for most blocked field goals. So it ended up working out for me. I knew I wasn't going pro. I knew I was going to college and college football because it was going to be my key to getting an education. So St. Mary's is a very, very good school for education. And I think at that time I realized this is what's best for me, and I think it was.
So what was college football like for you?
College football's tough. D1, D2, NAIA, D3, whatever. It's tough. It is really, you really don't have to be there. And they're we didn't have cuts at Ward because we were a smaller school. College was the first time I was at a place where they cut people who weren't good enough. And that really opens your eyes and kind of kicks you into high gear. Really shows you that you have to work hard to do what you want to do and to achieve your goals. You spend as much, if not more time with your team practicing and in film than you do in school when you're a college athlete. We're talking morning football, school, weights at lunch, practice after school, film session. It's very time consuming. So you learn how to work hard, and you develop a mindset that, hey, I can do this. I belong here. And once, I was very fortunate. I started my freshman year. So I was a starter. I played defensive line. So I was able to start. But once you're able to kind of get on the field and prove yourself. You get that confidence. You realize, hey, I do belong here. But that doesn't happen overnight. That takes a lot of hard work and a lot of long hours. College football, it really helped shape my work ethic, I think. It really, I credit it for being able to go to law school and graduate law school, because it taught me that, you can do hard things because you've done hard things.
What inspired you to study history and political science?
I think my grandpa did. On my mom's side, he was, well, on both my parents' side. So my grandpa on my mom's side, he was a history kind of nerd. He would when I got my first cell phone, he would text me trivia questions, and it'd always be history questions. And at the time I thought this is so silly, but I'll humor him. But now that he's passed away, I really that's one of those memories I really enjoy. And then on my dad's side, my grandparents, they both fled Europe during the Second World War. So they lived history. I'd read about World War II and learned about it. They lived that. They both lived in they lived in Slovenia and Germany, and they both fled. It was Yugoslavia at the time, not Slovenia, but they both fled because of the invasion, the start of the war, and then the invasion by the Russians. So, and then the Americans. The conflict was difficult for them. So, up until, and when I was young, I didn't know that, because that's not something that they'd talk about. Obviously, it was tough. But when you get older and realize that the things you've read about in a book, people have lived that. People actually experienced that. That's more than just words on a page. I think that made it real for me in a way, and it really just got me interested in the stories. I like history because of the stories that people have lived through. The big battles and the grand campaigns, they're very cool, but I like getting down to the individual and how it impacted people personally, and I think that's where that starts. And political science, history and political science are very, very related. You don't have one without the other, and I think it's just natural when you study one, you kind of become interested in both. At least in my experience, it was. So that's what got me kind of started on that history, political science route. And then when I was at St. Mary, I also got my minor in Spanish, partly because those personal stories you read. I wanted to be able to experience that in a new way by being able to read some accounts in a different language. Through specifically the Spanish Civil War, which was a war that took place right before World War II broke out. So it all kind of intertwined in my education, but I think it really started at an age when I realized that history is not just stuff that happened in the past. We're actively living it, and people. We're 3 or 4 generations from the start of this country. 3 or 4 lifetimes. So it's closer than a lot of us realize.
How did your college experience prepare you for law school?
Law school is a different beast. It's different in a lot of ways, but it's also the same in a lot of ways. History, you do a lot of essays and writing. You have tests and things. Law school, you do a lot of essays and writing, but you typically have one test, and that's your entire grade, and it's at the end of the year. So the writing skills I developed in college were very helpful in law school, but the mentality of, I've done 100-degree practices in the middle of August, and that sucked, and that was hard. So if I can do that, I can sit down and read, 60 pages of contract law. I think from the sports perspective, that's what I got. But from the academic perspective, you just hone those skills that you need. Law school, I always say this, and people kind of laugh when I say it, but anybody can do it if you're disciplined. It's just a matter of reading and taking good notes and really giving it your all. So if you guys want to go to law school, I highly recommend it. Anybody can do it. Just go in there with the right mindset but that's how college helped me prepare for law school. Patience is a big part of it. Knowing that things are, especially law is a different language in a lot of ways. So it takes a lot, reading it and rereading it and rereading it, and it's frustrating. But once you start to understand, because laws are written, they're just written differently. They're not written like standard English, right? They're just the wording and the phrasing and the vernacular are just different. But once you've done it enough and you start to understand it, it's very satisfying. You're like, look, I could do this. It just takes, like anything else, it just takes practice.
Yeah, practice makes perfect.
Exactly.
What made you decide to pursue law after undergrad?
I went to law school. I always, not always, but from a young age, I knew I wanted to learn history. And when you learn history, you learn a lot about injustice. The history of many nations is a history of injustice in a lot of ways. And once you learn about injustice, you learn how that happens and who is in the best position to try to mitigate, to try to remedy some of that. So I realized at a pretty young age that I want to study history, and a lot of history is very unfair treatment of a lot of people. So what would put me in the best position to try to fight that in my own small way? I'm just one person. I'm not naive, but what can I do in my life to try to fight some of that injustice? So Dr. Zacharias, who I'd mentioned earlier at the University of St. Mary, she went to law school. She graduated law school, but she didn't take the bar exam, which is it's the test you have to take to be a lawyer. And she had always told me, I really regret not doing that, because when you're a lawyer, you can do more for people than when you're not. So I always took that to heart, and I think that passion for wanting to help people, and that understanding that law is a way to do it. Law is a tool that we can kind of correct some injustices. That's what inspired me to want to go to law school.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What is the bar?
The bar exam.
You know what it means?
The bar is it's like a community. The community of lawyers is like the bar. So you'll hear about there's a lot of bar associations. Like in Wyandotte County, we have a Wyandotte County Bar Association. That is the Wyandotte County Association of Lawyers, basically. So that's what a bar is. So the bar exam is the exam that you take to become a lawyer. It's 2 days. It's I think it may have changed since I took it, but I think it's 100 or 150 multiple choice on one day, and then the other day it's 6 essays, and these are essays where they give you. They expect pages of. I remember when I took it, and I was grateful. I passed it my first try, but it was the most nerve-wracking test. I mean, obviously it's the most nerve-wracking test I've ever taken, and I didn't think you have 5 or 6 hours for the essays, and I was afraid I wasn't gonna have enough time to finish them, just because there's so much that they're testing you on. They're testing you to make sure you not only understand the law, but can apply the law. Here's a set of facts. Here's the law that applies. Now do something with this. What does this mean? But law school prepares you for that. That's why in law school you only have one grade, and it's your exam at the end of the year, because they're mimicking the bar exam and what that looks like.
What was your experience like at Creighton University School of Law? Creighton was, it was kind of a last minute decision for me. I knew I wanted to go to law school. I was torn between there was a school on the East Coast I was interested in. There's a school here locally I was interested in, and then Creighton was the other one. I visited Creighton, really, really fell in love with the campus. It's very walkable. At this time, I was out of college football, so I was in better shape. So it was a very walkable campus. I biked to school every day. I had a really, really, really good experience at Creighton. I had some very, very intelligent professors. Some of who they were clerks for some Supreme Court justices, very smart people. And I did very well in law school through my whole career. I was in what they called the AJD. It was an accelerated JD program, and JD is your law degree, Juris Doctor. It means a law degree. So typically a law degree takes 3 years to get. I got mine in a little over 2 because I was in their accelerated program, and what that meant was I
I was taking classes over the summer, whereas normally you have summer vacation. I just wanted to get it done, you know.
Advanced classes.
Yeah, advanced, I guess. It was really, you know, I would have taken that same stuff next semester, but I was in a hurry to get it done. I was at the time with my girlfriend, and we had met in high school, and I wanted to get married and start our life together. So this was the last thing. I thought it was the last thing in the way before we could do that. So I was like, yeah, I'm up here anyway. I'm not going home over the summer. I'll just take school all year round. Really, really good experience. So in my last year of law school in 2020, I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. You know, so I thought law school was going to be the last thing I had to do before I can go marry my wife and start my life. Turns out God had other plans, which, you know, you don't realize at the time. But looking back, I ended up, you know, I finished law school while I was doing cancer treatment. You got to remember this was during COVID, so we had gone virtual anyway. So it kind of worked out in a way because I didn't have to be in class. So at that time, I was able to move back home. I got treated at KU Medical, so I could take my classes online like everybody else, and then go get my cancer treatment. There was 1 or 2 finals. I think it was 1 for sure. I know it was 1 for sure. I took a final, and I was in my hospital room, and this wasn't one of the essay finals. This was it was a negotiation class, so obviously the finalists were going to negotiate. So it was on a Zoom call, and I remember they were hooking up my chemo right when the final started. So I was like, "Hey guys, you might see my nurse." You know, so sorry to interrupt. I'm trying to get the sympathy points, man. You know, I'm trying to pass that to negotiation. Use what you've got. But I ended up graduating on time still. Didn't miss any school for it, and I ended up graduating in, you know, the top 25% of my class. So Creighton, it was a good experience. I highly recommend if anybody's interested in a law school that's in the Midwest. I highly recommend Creighton. They have a very, very good faculty, and they have very good connections with a local kind of legal aid. My first job at law school was with what's called Legal Aid of Nebraska. So we would do pro bono, which means free law work for the Native American tribes in the Omaha area. And that was, you know, that was very gratifying because it was a chance to do what I wanted to do, which was try to give back and try to like make a small difference in people's lives. A lot of these cases we did, they were like collections defense. So it's a person who has money due and they can't pay it. What can we do? You know, we don't want to lose our home or our car or what have you. So they send us in and we do it for free and we try to negotiate and get them a good deal. So I really enjoyed that. And yeah, I had a good experience. Cancer aside, I had a very good law school experience.
What are areas of law you are most passionate about?
Areas of law I'm most passionate about, I think what's called civil procedure, which it's not quite civil rights. Civil procedure is if you're going to do something like anything legal, you have to follow a certain set of rules. And if you don't follow the rules, you know, there's certain consequences. So I'm very passionate about civil procedure. One, because all lawyers use it. Probably most of any law, whether they realize it or not, in their day-to-day. But also, it's the rules that make sure that things get done correctly. And, you know, if you don't follow the rules, there's consequences. And these consequences, they can be, you know, your case gets dismissed or very serious, you know, the bar gets involved and you can get in trouble. So that, from just a very lawyer standpoint, I'm passionate about. But kind of overall, I'm extremely passionate about, you know, I've always had an interest in constitutional law. That includes, you know, the amendments and due process, specifically the 14th Amendment. I think is a very, very important piece of legislation that we have. There's 2 parts to due process. I'm not going to bore you with all the intricate law details, but basically there's a part that says you have to act a certain way if you're the government. So the procedure they have to follow. And then there's substantive due process, which means there's certain rights that you have within due process. So I'm very passionate about that, particularly now, just in our kind of legal environment we live in. We're seeing some decisions that are kind of rolling that back a little bit. But that's always been an area of law that has fascinated me. I had a very, very intelligent constitutional law professor at Creighton, and he kind of instilled the importance of that in me. But I don't want to bore you guys with the legal jargon.
So, how do you use your legal skills to serve the community?
So I try to use my legal skills in I do a lot of civil work. So when there's criminal law and there's civil law. In criminal law, I've done some criminal defense. It's not really my area that I do a lot of work in, but you get charged with a crime and the lawyer defends you. I've done some of that. But my bread and butter is civil. So we have a contract. Someone breaches their contract. What happens now? I do a lot of contract defense and also contract litigation on the non-breaching side, and I think that helps kind of when people enter into an agreement, for example, we'll stick with a contract example. And then they break the agreement. They don't follow through. That's not fair, and that hurts. That can hurt, especially if it's somebody who was really relying on that contract for their business, for example. That can really hurt them and have a huge impact on their income and their way of life. So, I like that because it's fairness, and it's the consequence for trying to be unfair. So that's really where I do a lot of my work.
What's a legal challenge or case that taught you something profound?
Oh, that's a great question. We did, and obviously I can't be very super specific with names and stuff, but most of the work we did at Legal Aid was civil. And at Legal Aid, I was kind of the clerk, so I had a senior attorney, and they did a lot of the work and did a lot of the client meetings. But I do a lot of the research on the back end because that's how you learn to do the law. It's very common to have an attorney you work with to kind of like shadow and kind of learn from them. So I remember, and most of our work was civil, but we did do we had a lot of they're called family law disputes. Most of those are divorces or child custody, and those are hard, very hard cases. They're very sensitive, and most of the time, nobody walks away feeling great. Like neither party walks away feeling great about how it went. And there were some where there was abuse was alleged, and those ones they stick with you because, especially as a young attorney, you realize that this is not a game. This is the worst day of somebody's life, and they're relying on me to be a part of fixing it or giving them back some normalcy. So those are the cases that really stick with me, and they really motivate me to do a good job in all the work I do because this has very real impacts on people and has very long-term impacts on how their life will look.
There's a bunch of black people, I bet.
What's that?
A bunch of black people up there.
We did a lot of work with the tribes, so the Ponca, the Sante Sioux, and the Omaha tribes.
So how do you balance legal work with public service?
So it's a good question, and right now I'm lucky to be in a place in my career where I'm an in-house attorney, so I work for a company. So I'm not taking on new clients. My client is the company that I work for. So I have very very normal kind of office hours. Like I get out of work about the same time every day. I get in at the same time every day. That wasn't always the case for me. When I was younger, I did do a little more client work. But so right now, my day-to-day is very stable in terms of what my workload looks like. And it gives me a lot of stability to be able to devote all the time outside of work to public service. And I'm also very blessed to work for a company that's been very flexible with my campaign and my running, giving me a lot of grace. But it's not, this isn't my first time. This is my first time running for office, but my brothers and I, we also have a nonprofit that we try to we have in Wyandotte County, and we try to connect groups and people with resources that they might need for mostly right now it's been food, clothing, women's sanitary products, and also baby products, so like diapers and formula. So I'm used to doing some public service in a sense. So this feels like just a natural step, a natural progression from that.
Well, we finna get in your little health journey real quick.
Sure.
Can you share us your experience on being diagnosed with stage 3 cancer?
Yeah. So like you said,
law school.
Yeah, in law school, like you said, stage 3. Most cancers go up to stage 4. Mine was stage 3, and then it was A, B, and C. So stage 3C was the latest, and I was stage 3C. So it started in my groin, and then it spread to my abdomen, my lungs, my neck, one of the arteries on my neck, and then a little bit in my brain. When I had no symptoms other than, I was doing a lot of exercising, so I was a little more tired than I had been, but I thought I'm getting older, I'm not in shape like I used to. So I went to my now wife, then girlfriend. She was like, just go to the doctor, just get checked out. Why not? And thank God I did, because we had found it, and I had 4 surgeries. So I got a scar about this long on my abdomen here. That's the biggest one. And then I did 12 rounds of chemo and 2 bone marrow transplants. So the chemo, and I didn't know what chemo was.
I still don't know what it is.
Right, like you hear about it, but like I didn't know what it was. It's just a chemical that mixed up, and it's like in an IV bag. So I thought and it could also be a pill. So some of the chemo, and what chemo does, it basically it's a poison. It kills the cancer cells, but it also kills a lot of your healthy cells. That's why you lose your hair during chemo, is because it kills the hair cells, the hair follicles. So you get a lot of nasty side effects. A lot of like sores, like skin sores was one that I got, like mouth sores. But when I was on the strongest chemo, I had to have bone marrow transplants because it kills your bone marrow as well. It's that was from 2020. I was diagnosed in, I want to say, March of 2020. And I was declared in remission in 2023. So in remission means you're at a point now where there's no new cancer growth. So I've been in remission since 2023. During that time, it was tough. Like I said, we moved back to Kansas City from school. My wife had to quit her job to take care of me full time. At that time, my parents were selling their home, weren't sure if they're going to move or not. So I didn't really I stayed with them for a bit, but also when you're going through these chemo, you get a lot of health restrictions. My parents had dogs. There was a period of time where I couldn't live in a house with dogs because they can carry some diseases and stuff. So I spent a lot of time living with friends and living with my in-laws, kind of couch surfing. So it was not easy, but it really I'm never going to say I was grateful for it, because that's not true. But what I am grateful for is that it gave me this mental toughness now that nothing, if you can go through that, there's nothing you can't do. So that's what it gave me. It's a lot of long days, a lot of doctor's visits. And if you're a young man, there are certain types of cancers that are more prevalent than as you get older. My cancer, I had testicular cancer. That's one that I didn't realize at the time, but when you're young, between 18 and 25, you're more likely to have that than when you're older. We think of most cancers are something you get when you're older. So just something, so now I try to educate people, get checked out, it's important. Because I was otherwise, otherwise very healthy. I heard him. Otherwise very healthy young man who had no health issues, and this just kind of snuck up on me. I had my whole life planned out when I was in school. I'm going to graduate and marry this woman who I've been with for a decade. We're going to buy a house, 2 kids, white picket fence, whatever. And I've always been very independent. So you get to a point, I got to a point when I was at my heaviest after college. I was in shape. I played D-line. I was pretty in shape. I weighed about 270, and a lot of that was muscle. I got down to, at my lightest weight, I weighed 205 after chemo. 205. So 205. So I lost about 65 pounds from chemo. That was in the course of a few weeks. I lost my hair twice. Yeah. So because
it came back fast.
It did. It's a little thinner now. Appreciate that. Yeah, I lost my hair twice. I never had to do radiation, but I did chemo, and I had to have. They call them ports. This medical port. It's a thing they put under your skin, and it's basically an IV that goes directly to your heart. Because the chemo's too hard on your veins. It has to go right into your heart. It can mess up your veins. So I had one on this side, and then I had one on this side also. And this side would be the chemo, and this side would be like fluids, because it's very tough on your kidneys. So they have to give you a lot of fluids. And a lot of that, that required, you're in the hospital every day not the hospital, but like the chemo center. It's like an outpatient. You're in there for like 9 or 10 hours a day. You can't drive because there's risks of like passing out. So you lose your independence, and that was, as a 25-year-old man, that was extremely frustrating. I got really into chess. I got really into anime. I got really into reading again.
You watch anime?
Yeah, I did. I don't so much anymore. My wife she loves anime, so she got me into it. And when they got a needle and you can't move anywhere.
They just watch anime. Anime good.
Anime good, man. I get help when you're bored. Anime is, those heroes. They're always at they're at the darkest times, and they pull through. So that you get some inspiration from that.
Oh, wow.
But it was losing my independence was I think the hardest part. Not only I didn't have my own place to live, but I couldn't live by myself. It was not possible. So that was very tough. And then not being able to drive because you're on so many medicines, not just for the cancer, but to control the side effects. That you zone out, you can get lightheaded, and it's just not safe to drive. So you have to get driven anywhere you go. And
so mad.
Yeah, it was tough, and you have a lot of restrictions. So there was a period of time for 6 months, I couldn't go outside. This is when I was on the very hard chemo, because if someone had mowed their grass and it was freshly cut grass, there could be fungus in it, and that fungus could be blown in the wind, and I can breathe that in, and I had no immune system, so stuff like that was very. And then this is all compounding because it's all during COVID also.
Oh,
so stuff like that was it was frustrating, but just reminding myself that it's gonna end. I'm not giving up. So 25 to 27 was when I was doing most of my treatment. I appreciate I was cheating. I tell people this. I was cheating because my aunt, my great aunt, I call her my aunt, she's a sister servant of Mary in Leavenworth, so she's a nun. So she had the whole convent praying for me.
Oh yeah, you was cheating.
So yeah, exactly. I had the whole convent praying for me. They were checking in on me. How's Andrew doing? You prayed for him this week, every day. So Aunt Loretta, I hope I'm going to send her this video. But yeah, she was a huge reason I got through this, and all the support. I tell people this, and my wife hates it. She rolls her eyes, but I would have died if it wasn't for my wife. She quit her job. She dropped everything, moved with me. Was my full-time caretaker. I mean, my full-time took care of me. There was a few times where it's like, if you get a fever that's above a certain number, it's just automatically you have to go to the ER. If it doesn't matter if you feel okay or not, you have to go to the emergency room. And I would fight and cry and complain. I don't want to go to the ER. I was just in the hospital. I'm so tired of going to the hospital. I just want to have a normal night. And she'd be like, look, I get that, and I love you, but you're being a baby. And this is what the doctor says, so we're going to follow what the doctor said. So God bless her. And it takes a village to get through something like that.
So, what advice would you give to young people facing health challenges?
That's a very good question. Definitely, you have to be okay with leaning on your support system. When I was, like I said, I was 25. I was a young, independent man. I felt like I was being a burden for parts of it. My family, they have to put their life on hold for me. That's something that they want to do. They want to be there for you, and they want to do it for you because they want what's best for you. So be okay with asking for help and be okay with getting help is the number one piece of advice I'd give. Have a good relationship with your God, whatever you believe in. Just have a good relationship. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to feel like it's unfair and why me. But just have a good spiritual relationship and look for people who've been through it and seek advice. At KU, they have a great program. They'll have survivors come and talk to you if you're going through it and kind of explain, big picture stuff, but also, and that big picture stuff is great, but, stuff like what is chemo? What are some of the side effects that I should expect that the doctor, you're getting so much information in such a short period of time that you're kind of numb. The doctor's telling you all this stuff that you're going to have to do and you're just like, whoa. So having somebody who's been through it and can explain it to you and like, hey, look, I've been through it. Here's what you need to expect. Here's what you should do. In my situation, it was, do you have a will? Do you have a power of attorney in case something happens? So just have those conversations, but be willing to lean on people who are there for you.
What does Wyandotte County mean to you personally?
Wyandotte County's home. It's always been home to me. Everybody calls it like a big city, little town. It's a city, but it feels like a town. You're separated by most people by just 1 degree. It's like, hey, I went to school with your uncle. I know your brother. I'm sure you guys run into that all the time. People know your family, know where you're from, know what you're about. And that's just so cool because people take a genuine interest. They're invested in you and your well-being. When I was going through health, my health battles, I had people reaching out to me that I've never met, never heard of, would not have met, but they're like, hey, you don't know me. I went to school with your uncle. I know your cousin. I met your dad. And we're rooting for you. We're praying for you. And that's not something you get everywhere. Just that sense of community. So Wyandotte County to me just means community, and it's just home.
What kind of community work have you been involved in?
So one of the things I'm very proud of that I've done and continue to do, and will continue to do if they ask me to come back, is I mentor for what's called peer. And basically what it is you take a group of high school age students, and I was doing this through Bishop Ward because I was an alum, so they asked me to come through them. You take the age of a high school age students and you basically train them on recognizing signs of like emotional crisis in your peers. These students are they're voted on by their students as people that they feel like they can come talk to if they're going through a tough issue in life, basically. So we kind of mentor them and teach them, here's how you can here's how you can help somebody navigate emotional trauma, but also teach them, this is something that you have to get an adult involved in, right? There's a line. So that's something I've been doing that since I graduated high school. I'm very, very proud of that work. I also went out through St. Mary. I spent some time reading to grade school kids, just reading books. It's not a huge, thing, but I think it's cool when you're that age to have somebody come in and just spend a half hour reading to your class. And then I mentioned it previously, but my brothers and I, we have a nonprofit that we try to connect people who need resources with the resources in our community. Wyandotte County has a lot of very cool organizations doing a lot of very cool work, kind of like helping people find food or find resources that they need. So just been involved in that, and that's been a very rewarding program.
How do you and your wife stay connected to the community?
So my wife and I, we try to get out and spend time in the community. That's the best way to stay connected. Just especially on the campaign, but even before the campaign, we go. One of our favorite things was the third Friday art walk down at Strawberry Hill. Things like that. Just spend time talking to people who live here. Another one is St. John's Croatian Fest. They have a great festival every year. My alumni isn't really around anymore, Christ the King, but St. Patrick's another school. They do these social events. That's a great way to stay connected and just kind of meet up with folks who are living here and just touch base and participate in an organization in an event that usually goes to a good cause.
So, what inspired you to run for Wyandotte County Commissioner?
So, we touched on it a little bit previously, but I think the fact that this is home, this is where I've always wanted to be. This is a place that I want what's best for the people who live here, and I think I can do a good job for this community just with my education and my personal background, kind of my mindset and my experiences. I was really, really touched having so many people in our community really fighting with me on my cancer journey, so I want to fight for them and get them results that I think we need.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing District 2?
So in my race is 2 at large, so it's a countywide election. So that question is, what's the biggest challenges facing Wyandotte County? And I think infrastructure is always one of those top challenges. We have an aging infrastructure. We have a sewer system that is rain and stormwater and sewer combined still in a lot of places, which we're working to fix, but it's taking time.
Oh, it's taking its time.
It's taking its time.
It's taking its time.
We have a lot of, especially in the Argenton area, a lot of flooding problems with the levee, and working to resolve that with the Corps of Engineers. They've got some projects that are finishing up in 2026, but next steps after that. So our infrastructure, and as you guys, I'm sure you're aware, we have so many bridges closed right now that kind of cuts Wyandotte County off from kind of the rest of the Midwest, and that has a negative impact on our businesses here. If I live on the Missouri side, for example, and it's like, well, I wanted to go spend money down in Strawberry Hill, but it's going to be another 20-minute detour because the bridge is closed. Just forget it. I'm just not going to spend that money there. So infrastructure, and then also the cost of living, just generally, not only property tax, but just the cost of living as a whole. Obviously, Wyandotte County has a high. In these recent years, we've seen higher, increase in property taxes. So I think one way that we can kind of mitigate that is by bringing in investment. We get businesses here to invest, and they spend their money here, and they pay their taxes here, and they attract families that want to live here. The more roofs there are to tax, the more we can kind of disperse the property tax burden, right? So if we can get more businesses to pay property tax and sales tax, more families to support those businesses to pay those taxes, we can kind of lower the overall tax burden by kind of spreading it out. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve. Those are my 2 really big issues I'm trying to tackle.
What's your vision for the future of Wyandotte County?
So I really believe, and I've said this, I'm on record saying this a lot, I really believe our better days are ahead of us. I think Wyandotte County's best days are ahead of us still. We've got great, hardworking families that live here. We've got an awesome education from grade school through high school and college, all here in Wyandotte County. We've got amazing, amenities. Our government does a good job with the resources it has. So I really think our future, it's more investment and development. It's continuing to support education and small businesses because we need small businesses. We need entrepreneurs, right? Every community does. So what can we do to get them to the table and get them some benefits in a way that doesn't put them out of business? But I think the future of Wyandotte County is bright. It just is going to take the right leadership to get us to those goals.
Mm-hmm. How do you plan to engage in youth and families in your work?
So I think this is a great example, just these kind of events. I think, first of all, Jegna Klub, what you guys are doing is incredible. Show you guys that this is a real viable career path, journalism, interviewing. But as a whole, I've made it a priority of mine to be available and visible for the entirety of the county. On my website, I have my personal cell phone number. I want people who have questions or concerns to reach out to me, text me or call me, because I think that visibility and that accountability are so important. When you're a local leader, you have to be available for your constituents, right? If you're having an issue and you're not getting answers on it, you should be able to call the person you're elected to solve that issue. So that's been kind of a cornerstone of my campaign, and I just want to continue with that. I want to be accountable. I'm not one of those guys that shows up, when it's election year and then you don't see me for 4 years. I live here, a night out with me and my family is just a night out in our community. So just really being available and being here, and I think that goes a long way.
What does leadership mean to you in this role?
Leadership, first and foremost, it means, President Truman, from Independence, so just across the river. He used to have a plaque on his desk when he was in office, and it said, "The buck stops here." So what he meant by that, which you've probably heard that phrase, it means, I'm not passing the blame or excuses. If it's on my desk, I'm taking accountability for it. That's what leadership means. It means that you own the issues. You don't try to skirt blame. You don't try to point fingers. You vote for something, and you can explain why you voted for it if people have questions, and understanding that not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. If you try to please everybody, you'll end up pleasing nobody, but you just got to rely on your values and do what's right and what you think is best for the community, and stand by it, stand 10 toes down.
Yeah. Got to stay on 10.
On 10.
How do you plan to make government more accessible and transparent?
So that's a great question, and that's an important question because that's been one of the things I hear a lot in Wyandotte County. I think we can start with a line item breakdown of how our money's spent. So right now, our budgeting, I don't know if you guys have followed budgeting, but the way we do it is we get kind of a department budget, but we don't, like a department expenses, but we don't get like exactly what that was spent on. I'd love to see that broken down so I can trace every dollar exactly how it was spent. And then I also want to take that information and put it on a web page that's accessible and something that anybody can, you don't need an accounting degree to read. A lot of the government documents you receive, I have a law degree, so I can read it because it's written in a way that's tough to digest unless you're kind of like specialized. So we need to make the information easy to understand for the average voter, and also make it available. So that's something I'd love to do. I'd love to have that. I'd love to have that information on a public website that anybody can go to and find exactly how and where we spend our money up, from the prior year.
Last but not least, final question: what legacy do you hope to leave through public service?
So what I hope to leave, I'm not so much concerned about my personal legacy. I just want to leave Wyandotte County better than I found it. You know what I mean? I'm doing this because I think we're at a moment in our history where this election is gonna have a large impact over the next 15 or 20 years, and I want to make sure that Wyandotte County gets investment and gets money for infrastructure and to develop workforce programs. So the legacy I guess I want to leave this office with Wyandotte County being a better place to live, a more affordable place to live, with better services and infrastructure than it was when I got there.
Well, all right, that's all the questions we have for today. This was your host, Brian.
Hayden.
And this has been JegnaTalk for you, by you.
Number one teen show in the Midwest, broadcasted on 152 radio stations.
And today we interviewed
Andrew Kump.
And before we go, could you give us your socials one last time?
Sure thing. So Facebook is going to be Andrew Kump for District 2 at large. Instagram, TikTok, Kump for Wyco, KUMP, the number 4 Wyco. And my website is kump4wyco.com, KUMP, the number 4 Wyco.com. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. And y'all already know, we out here.